Welcome to FemLead, the podcast on female leadership and role models. This show aims to inspire and equip you with the tools you need to navigate your career plans. FemLead brings inspiring career perspectives and strategies to guide your path to success. Your host, Alexandra, will interview role models on new exciting topics with each episode. If you like what you hear, give us a review and subscribe to the show on your preferred streaming platform. Enjoy.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of FemLead Podcast. Our guest today is Sonja Lakner. Originally from Austria, Sonja studied communications and media, and after a few years of working in digital agencies in London, she has worked in leadership positions in Sweden for the past 15 years. Sonja is passionate about people and helping them develop their full potential in the work environment and loves to work with people from different cultures. Her latest position was managing director for the Swedish office of digital consultancy Futuris. She's on a career break since the end of November 2022, and she's joining us today to talk about what does it mean to take a career break and how can it help in your career development. Without further ado, let's welcome Sonja Lakner. Hi, Sonja. It's great to have you here today. Welcome to FemLead Podcast. Tell us, how is your day today?
Hi, Alexandra. Well, I'm having a great day. It's Christmas break as we're recording this, and it's actually been a very relaxing Christmas break for me. So I'm fine. I'm really looking forward to talking to you today.
That's fantastic. It's a great, I would say, activity to reflect on the past year in the Christmas week, but also to prepare for the new year. So as you're actually listening to this, we're in 2023, and Sonja and I have been discussing since 2022 about meeting up and chatting about a very, very important topic that I'm sure plenty of our listeners have thought about in particularly the Christmas week. So today we're going to talk about taking a break and what does it mean to have a career gap. And you, Sonja, as we're recording, are currently in a career gap, meaning that you are not going to work in a few days in the next year. And this was something that I really wanted to discuss here at FemLead Podcast because a large discussion about career development is, what am I going to do next once you know that one role is, it taught you everything it could. So now you need to move forward, right? But what do we do when we don't know what to do? And what do we do when we know we need a break before the next step? And this is exactly what Sonja and I we're going to discuss today. So Sonja, tell us a little bit about what is your current career gap setup that you've now made for yourself?
Yes. Well, as you were saying now, actually, as you were explaining it, it sounds like I've been really planning this for a long time, and somehow I have, but in other ways I really haven't. So I have been managing director of a digital consultancy for over 3 years, and it's been COVID times. We've worked from home. I've put together my own team. It's been a very, very stressful 3 years. And then we kind of, a little bit like a lot of other people, I think I felt we came out of COVID and we started talking about the next phase of the company. And that's when I just suddenly thought, yeah, but not with me. I think I've done my phase here, and this is the phase I should have been in. And then I think the company needs new energy, but also I need new energy, and I'm not going to get it in going into the next phase. And because in a role like a managing director, you often have a very long notice period, I of course had thought about the step, not just lightly and say, okay, I'm just going to leave. But I thought, okay, I'm going to give these 6 months that I have. I'm still going to be needed very much in my job, and I won't have time to actually reflect on my next step. Plus, I didn't want to put that pressure on myself to, finish one job and at the same time already look for another one. I think in those types of roles, that's very, very hard to do. And I also had kind of realized that I do have the means to take a little break. I have financially, I have the possibility. I have a husband who works as well. And I kind of thought that actually it's a good time to do that. So right now I'm on a break. I start working at the end of November. So it's been almost a month. And that's kind of where I am today. And this is how far I have thought. And this is what I'm doing right now.
That's great. Looking at this new year, I also made a career switch that I've mentioned online, and I also wanted to have a short break. I took a few weeks in between to don't do anything related to my job on a daily basis, which was great.
Yeah.
And I must emphasize the importance of having time for yourself without a goal, because I was so motivated to start a new job after that break. And I also felt that I had time to rest mentally and get out of the old role and go into a new role. And that means energy, that means, feeling rested. That means being excited about having new colleagues, having a new place of work, generally understanding more about a new company. It gives you energy and this feeling of starting fresh, right? And when you said that you decided without any plan to, well, you didn't necessarily say that you have a plan, right? And we spoke, so I know that there's not necessarily a plan yet.
That's true.
Something that, our listeners will be wondering is, weren't you worried?
Well, yeah, I'm worried all the time, but I think the worry comes and goes. It kind of one day you kind of can get this flash. I can get this flash of worry, but then I get very excited again. And I think what helped me a little bit to deal with this worry was that I've kind of set myself at least a little bit of a deadline. And I think, and we can talk about that afterwards about, setting deadlines and goals. But I think the other thing that really helped me was that because I was going to finish just before the Christmas break, it's actually not unnatural to be off during that time anyway. It feels a little bit like everybody else is also on a break. It's not just me that's kind of on the break. And I think the other thing that why I wasn't so worried was because my husband did a similar thing a while ago. And I know that you want to go back to work in the end. It's not like you just quit work and then you'll never go back or you'll never find a job. But I mean, what was really worrying was when I took this decision, we did not have the same economical situation. No, it was before all the tech companies, for example, started to let people go and things like that. So there were different worries during different periods of time, I would say. And right now, I think my biggest worry in my head right now is mostly about, well, what do I want to do? Like, am I going to figure out what I want to do? And am I not just going to fall into the trap of doing what I'm supposed to do next?
And that's something that takes time to figure out, but it also takes courage to change. So what is your career motto about, this topic of finding what you want to do and not what you're supposed to do?
Well, I don't know if I have a motto around it. I think, to be honest, a lot of the times in my career, I was always driven by curiosity. If something excites me, then I'll do it. It doesn't mean, I don't have to do it forever. But also, I think I've had quite a natural progression. Like I've always naturally ended up in leadership roles. I've naturally ended up in certain types of roles. But for example, I was working as a project manager for a while because I'm quite good at planning. I'm quite good at structuring. But I realized after a while, it's like, I know I'm good at this, but I don't actually like to work with it. It's not what I want to do. And so that's when I changed into strategy, because I actually realized I'm also quite good at having the bigger picture of things. And I don't have to work with what everybody thinks I'm good at. And I think that that was actually, with project management, was one of those very, very clear decisions from myself to say, yes, I know you all think I'm good at that, but that's just because you haven't found someone else to do the work. I'm going to move away from this, find someone else to do it. And I think that was the one time where I really felt it was a very, very conscious decision to not do that anymore, even though it's something that comes natural to me and it's easy, but I didn't actually enjoy working with it. I think that was quite clear. And I think that's something that's quite good to sometimes take just a step back and think about, am I doing what I'm doing because everybody else says, but you're so good at it? Or am I doing it because I'm actually enjoying it?
Yeah, that's the reflection part that sometimes it's hard to even discuss, like plan or start from somewhere. So how do you start thinking about what you want to do and not do what people believe you're supposed to do?
Well, as you probably know, there's a lot of books about this. There's a lot of people writing about it on LinkedIn. The funny thing is that most of these advices actually start with, you already have a dream that you haven't pursued. It's quite funny. It's very often about, I don't know, you want to open a bakery, but you've never dared. Here's the way to do it. Here's how you dare. And I'm like, but this guiding star is not there. It's not, I can't see it. So I think it's much harder to actually do it when you don't have a clear goal. And I think this is what I'm right now trying to figure out, and why I also need that break is because I think you only get back to what you really enjoy, what you really like to do when you have some time off, because otherwise the mental load is really heavy. You kind of just do the routines, you just kind of do all these things that you normally do, but you don't necessarily reflect. And I think that's the reflection part is probably the one that's going to help me the most, but it's also the most, well, you need patience for that, I'd say.
I was about to say that when you said that you are on a break, and we spoke previously, you said that you found it hard in the beginning because you weren't doing much. So maybe before we go into specifics of how you're going to plan your next career move, what are you now experiencing being on a career break?
Well, actually, initially when I started taking a break, I actually thought, I'm going to meet all these people. I'm going to go to all these conferences. I'm going to do all this inspirational part. And I did for a week. And then I got sick. And it really felt like my body was just saying, why don't you just stop doing that? You just did that through all your work life. You always met people. You always went to conferences. Take a break. And then instead, because I was sick, I was actually just on the phone to people, or I got a lot of response on my LinkedIn posts. And so I had like small interactions with people, but I actually realized maybe right now I don't need to talk about my career choices yet. Maybe I can just leave it for a while. And so then I decided I'm going to leave it until after Christmas. So that's the one thing. So that's what I'm feeling there, is that I need a bit of distance to get back to it. But I also realized that I need to talk to people that are very much outside of my sphere, like people in different industries. I started talking to people that have completely different jobs, or just, I think I wrote on one of my LinkedIn posts, I was sitting in a cafe and I was going to read a book. And there were these two old ladies that were talking about, I think they had somebody they knew in common, but it was the first time they'd met. So they told each other their life stories. And I just started sitting in this cafe, listening to them, thinking, wow, like this is such a different life. And it got really, it was like I was sitting there eavesdropping, but it was just so interesting to be in a completely different context. So just opening up a little bit and kind of letting other inputs in, I think, is really, really important.
Yes, I really want to pinpoint here two things. And also based on my own reflection, really listening to what you're saying and understanding that it's really, really similar. The first one is that there is power in stillness. I really think that if you don't do something, it doesn't mean that the world will stop moving and that opportunities will cease to exist because you are not in the middle of them.
Exactly.
So if you are now in a situation where you're like, oh my God, if I don't do something tomorrow, I'm going to miss out on the next train, know that there is another one, and that you might not know it already left towards you because you're so worried thinking, oh, I don't see anything coming my way tomorrow, that you kind of miss on the fact that there are so many things changing around us that it's impossible that there's not going to be something coming your way at some point. And this is the first thing. And the second one is that you really need to get out of your bubble to have those experiences, to change the circle or narrative that you have been part of, if you want to have that change in your life and, you know, welcome innovation, welcome new ideas, welcome new people, inspiration. It cannot happen constantly in the same group of people, right? So getting out of your bubble in a way, it also means to maybe not necessarily eavesdrop on a cafe, but you could do that too if it's interesting. But it also means to, for example, reaching out to some other people. You reached out to me. Yeah. And I was like, we've never met. And we probably met through our, commonly shared post on LinkedIn. But that was about it. We didn't really have any sort of common network connection that said, oh, you two should meet. And I feel like this is the start of something completely different, because when we spoke first, we had so many things in common. But at the same time, our experiences are fairly different. Yeah. We do not work in the same industry or with the same sort of focus. But at the same time, we understand what we are striving to do and who we're striving to become as professionals. And this is something that will only happen if you reach out and expand your current network. So I think for the listeners, it's very important to not, first of all, give up on those opportunities, even if you don't see them, and also to not shy away from putting yourself out there outside of your bubble.
Yeah, and I think one example there I have that opened my eyes a lot is also meeting people that have a completely different setup in their life. For example, I met people from the academia or people that have their own freelance company or something. And it suddenly made me realize that I've always worked 9 to 5. I've never had any other setup in my life. And I mean, with talking to them, I realized I probably don't want to either, but it's interesting to explore that there are these other options. And I think that's actually there are a lot of different ways you can put yourself outside of your own bubble. It can actually be, now luckily we can travel again. So travel is always a good way of expanding your horizon. But you can do it without traveling as well. One of my initial ideas was to actually take a trip to Asia, because I have some friends there and I was going to visit them. And then I realized that I'm too tired after this job. I don't want to right now think about vaccinations or book 15-hour flights. I was just not up for it. So instead, I think I'm much more going to do like shorter things. I was actually thinking of, why don't I just get on a train somewhere for a few hours? And that's enough, probably. I don't need to go to the other side of the world. But there's lots of different ways of getting outside of your own bubble, I think.
And it doesn't need to be the traditional getting out for a coffee with someone new type of interaction. It can also be not making it as professional as you thought, because those interactions at times can feel a little bit staged. Yeah. So really bringing in something new can come from any environment that you're in. So when I traveled a lot in 2022, and I didn't really think about it until, now that we're in the end of 2022, the last week, and we're making this recording, I was going through my pictures yesterday and I was like, oh my God, I have had so many experiences, but because it all happened so fast, I didn't even spend time to enjoy the fact that I went to Argentina for the first time, in Latin America, and I was like, over the moon that I can get to have this experience, or that I just met friends that I haven't met in 2 years, and they came to visit me and we spent weeks together, during the year, which didn't really happen in a few other years, right? Yeah. And it happened so fast that I didn't get the chance to say, wow, that was really a very good experience for me to have. And I really enjoyed having those people and those experiences in my life. What did I learn from it? Well, I didn't really think about it because I didn't really spend time to not do something else,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, I think this is, it's really, and there is, I think also one of the things I'm reflecting on, because we also said, like, not everybody can take a break in between jobs. I think that you don't have to. And I mean, I've never done it before. It's the first time I'm doing it. I don't think you have to take a break after every job. But, like you said, like a few weeks or a week off is also enough if you're just changing a job, you're changing environment. And very often, if you are changing to a similar job somewhere else, I don't see at all why you would take a break. You can definitely take those interviews and take those explorations during especially if you're employed. I think it was for me just a time in my life where also, my kids are now a little bit bigger. They're not very small anymore. I'm focusing on myself again. I don't have but I have the kind of, I'm also at a point in my life where you kind of feel, well, if I want to do something different, it has to be now. And maybe in the end, I realized I don't want to do anything different at all. I was just fed up, and now I just needed a break. So I don't think that everybody needs to take a long break, because you can also take shorter timeouts, or you can even take timeouts during the week or during the day. That might be enough, especially if you're in the beginning of your career. You might not need like a few months break. Like that would be quite counterproductive, even that maybe you shouldn't question after in every job, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the right thing? I very much until now just went with the flow. Whatever came my way, I just did that. And I can't say I went in the completely wrong direction, but for some people that might be the case, that after a while they look back and they said, well, that's not what I planned. But at the same time, it's a lot of experience, and it's just as good to just go with the flow. And at some point, maybe you need to have a some kind of break where you kind of take a reflection on what you've done so far.
That's a good point, and a good reflection for those of our listeners who are like now wondering, should I actually have a break? Because I don't know, I've been in the same position or in the same situation or at the same company for many years. And the answer is no, you don't need to. It's really a choice, and also a point in time where if you need to have a break, or if you feel that this is something you would want to experience if you've never had, like you just mentioned, right? Really consider your current situation, and, if this is the best option for you, really take it as a opportunity, and not as a complete stop for a few months, because it doesn't need to be a burnout situation and a difficult situation for you to say, okay, it's time to take a break.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just, because you said staying at the company for a long time, actually at my previous company, I stayed there for 11 years because it was actually, it fitted. I was still had a lot of opportunities to be curious, to learn new things. But in the end, there was something that I knew exactly what I was looking for in my next job. I was very, very clear. And that kind of that I would never have needed a break, because I already knew what I was looking for in my new job. So it was much more about making the time to look for that. So that I could do in my current job. So that wasn't it was never, I would never have considered even taking a break, because it wasn't what I needed. So I think it's really very situational. And I mean, I'm not really the person that likes to not do anything, and I'm not doing anything, but it's a very different, you do get back to certain things that you maybe haven't had time to do, or maybe haven't had even time to think that you want to do.
Absolutely. Let me ask you now that, because you've mentioned already during the interview that you want to talk about goals and your deadlines and how you are basically strategizing, if I may say so, your next move. So what can you tell us about the deadlines and the goals that you have for this career break?
Yeah, well, I had a very kind of, ambitious plan in the beginning. I threw that one out of the window, which was really just, now before Christmas, I'm going to meet all these people. After Christmas, I'm going to go on interviews, and then I'll start working in March. Not going to happen. But I think now, I think what my plan is, I do have this kind of vague deadline that by March, I want to have an idea of what I'm going to do. And I ideally would have liked to either have some conversations or have, interview situations or whatever it is. But I think I want to try and stay very open until the end of what kind of conversations I get into. I don't want to close doors too early. That could be either that I'm like, oh, I don't know about that industry, or I don't know about that company. I'm trying to be open-minded about it. What I'm right now doing, which is an interesting approach for me, that because like we said earlier about the fear of missing out, that I'm not applying for this job now, it's going to be gone. What I'm actually doing now is I am bookmarking jobs that I find something in that job ad is interesting. So I'm trying to collect them and look through them and looking at what is it that I find interesting about them. So it's very open and very wide. Like I wouldn't apply for them, but I'm just looking, and they can be very, very wide. Like yesterday, there was one that I thought, oh, this sounds really interesting. And it was for a library. I'm never going to work in the library, but I was like, what is interesting about this? What do I like about it? And so that's the phase I'm in right now. It's this exploration phase, and I'm doing it in a way that I'm, on the one hand, I'm like exploring these job ads, but there's also this idea forming in my head, but I don't know if I'm going to do that. And maybe I'm going to try it. I have this idea in my head that I would like to shadow people, like be their intern for a day, with people that maybe I'm really interested in what they're doing, but I don't know what they're doing. So, I mean, I know lots of different people with very different jobs. It'd be quite interesting to just see people's days. Practically, that might be hard to do, but it was a thought that I thought, it suddenly kind of hit me that would be quite nice.
Yeah, when the first time I heard that, I thought it was a really cool plan, and on how to spend also your, work week, and experiment and experience different jobs that, like you said, you're probably never going to end up doing day by day, but it's a really cool experience to follow someone around and think about, okay, what does it mean to work in a library, for example?
Yeah.
I hope that if you do have this experience, you'll come back and tell us how it is, because I find that super interesting, especially from the perspective of not actually being employed and doing the job, but rather seeing it as an outsider. I find that quite fun to experience, right? And when it comes to your background, because you did mention that you worked for 11 years at your previous company, and that you managed to move through the ranks, but also get to a managing director role that was pretty much the end of that journey for you. I wanted to ask, for those listeners who are interested to join strategy and consulting, industries that are quite known for having a lot of hard work, and also it can be stressful at times. What do you think are the skills that can make you succeed?
Oh, I mean, strategy is one thing. Consulting is a different one, I would say, because I've come from the agency world, where you kind of work very differently than you do in the consulting world. I would say that if you want to get into consulting, it's really good. First of all, you need to start as a consultant, I think. Because you need to experience what consulting is like. And for that, it's normally quite good to have quite a clear job description. So, for example, that you're either a developer in certain programming languages, or you're very clearly a service designer or a designer. Or now I'm just talking from my background as consulting in the digital industry, but I think to get into consulting, what you need to think about is that you are going to be staffed at a client normally, which means that it needs to be quite clear what skills you have. Broad roles are hard in the consulting world, unless it is in the internal and in the managing role, which is very few of in consulting. The other thing I think that when you want to get into consulting that's really important is there's always the negotiation between what the clients think they need, but what they say they need, but what they actually need. And normally it's a compromise. It's always a compromise between the two. So that's one thing I think you need to really know, that you're probably never going to do exactly things that the way you think they're supposed to do. It's always a bit of a compromise. And the other thing is you need to like to be in different environments. You don't normally work in the same team all the time. You need to be adaptable. Things change. You might suddenly get thrown into a completely different environment. So it's very, very good. And I think it's very, very good to be flexible, but I think also even to have a leading position. I mean, I started as a consultant. When I started as a head of strategy, I was working with clients on client projects, and that helps you a lot then going into an internal leadership role, because you understand the reality of the day-to-day of your consultants. And in the end, what you're selling or what your assets are is your people. So it's really important to maybe go first, show a big understanding for the different disciplines and their daily lives, and then you can actually manage them much better because you understand. I think it's very hard to just come in and never be in client projects yourself. Then you're kind of leading something that you don't know what you're actually talking about, to be honest.
That's a very, very good and comprehensive reflection of what does it mean to work in digital consulting, because it is fairly different than other sorts of consulting, and also working with strategy for digital projects is fairly different than working for strategy projects, for example, right? So a very good reflection on how it actually works. When it comes to work-life balance, I do want to ask you, what is now your reflection, since we're talking about reflections, now that you're on a career break? You said that you used to work 9 to 5, obviously a highly stressful environment. What is now your kind of goal, let's say, when it comes to work-life balance? Did you change the way you look at it?
Actually not, no, because I think I was already quite good at it. I'm one of those people that I go home and I switch off. I'm not somebody that runs around and, I'm not standing at the playground and still checking emails and stuff. I don't actually do that. So I think one reflection for me now has been that I've actually had quite a good balance, and I think that I can go back to that. I think the one thing that maybe is quite, it is very interesting to reflect on how much do I switch off. And I think it is something that to me has come over the years. I was really bad at it like 10 years ago, but I've gotten much, much better at it. And I think it's something you need to force yourself to do as well. Prioritize your own time, take the breaks you need. If I have to pick up my kids, I will do that. And I will not at the same time take a call or, things like that. I think that's actually not something I would change from the way I've done it, which is a really nice reflection. It's actually really, really nice to know that's the way I would continue doing it. So that's actually not a part that I have any, that I wouldn't change.
That's great to hear, because usually when you take a break, you also get to some realizations of what you don't want to keep from your old setup, right? And usually it has to do a lot with the way that you prioritize yourself, your family, your personal life. Obviously, this is quite general to say, but I've heard it many times.
It is for most people.
It is true that you need to get to a peak of like, okay, I cannot do it like this anymore. Let's change something. And that usually comes with prioritizing your private life, which is, of course, also a very good thing to consider. But I'm happy to hear that for you, you've already started doing this. And I want to mention the fact that you mentioned, you said the word experience, which I cannot emphasize enough on. What does it mean to go through a career development plan or a progression? You need to have the experience to know this suits me and this does not suit me. And this is why this works for me. And this is why this does not work for me. You cannot always jinx it by listening to somebody else. And it's quite funny for me to say that I interview leaders that tell you, okay, if you want to do it like me, I did this. It's funny to say, but there's no perfect recipe that's a copy paste plan that will make your life look or sound fantastic. And I really want to emphasize the fact that you have to have your own experience when it comes to this different scenarios of your life, of your career, of your progression, because no one else's advice will actually fit 100% your situation. And I'm happy that you mentioned earlier LinkedIn, because I never said this in the podcast because I never got to it, but we've hosted a networking event last year, and it was a quite intimate, small networking event in Denmark. And we didn't really record it or took any particular snippets of it because we wanted to keep it, intimate and focused on important topics about career progression.
Mm-hmm.
But there was something there about how life looks on LinkedIn or on social media. And I really want to emphasize here what I said at the event, that it's not real. So of course you want to put yourself first as a professional and you want to talk about your successes. You're not going to go there and be like, today I had a horrible day and oh my God, it really sucks. You're not going to say that necessarily, right? There are people who do it and I really admire them. But I don't know, when I have a bad day, I don't really go on LinkedIn and say I had a bad day. I just take it myself and be like, okay, this was really not a great day, right? And this is something that I feel people miss when they look at how their progression should be for their own, environment, that it needs to look like every next step is perfect. And it's really not. And that's why we're taking these conversations to also talk about the fact that, well, you don't have any plan. And, I also made the career switch at a point where I wasn't necessarily thinking that this is the next thing. If you would have asked me beginning of 2022 how my year will look like, I probably would have told you something else, right? And this is something that evolves, develops, and it's okay to not have it planned out. And it's okay to change your situation. And do it your way, and it doesn't have to appear on LinkedIn if you don't want to share it. But
No,
it's also fair to say that it's not really all flowers and magic and being the best person in the right place at the right time all the time, right?
No, definitely not. And this is actually, I have been thinking a lot about whether I should document anything of what I'm doing on LinkedIn or not. I was like, thinking maybe this makes me unemployable. Maybe this is like not at all what somebody that ever wants to employ me wants to hear. But I think what encouraged me was so many people actually reaching out to me and saying, how do you do this? What are you doing? How do you think about this? And I realized that a lot of people actually are having thoughts about either taking a break or having at least think about what their next step is. And I think that's what's motivated me to share. And I mean, like I think one of the first things for me was what I did first, or what I ended up doing in the first few weeks was exactly what I said I wouldn't do. Like, I started cleaning the apartment and cleaning out everything. I said I was not going to do that. And then, of course, that was exactly what I ended up doing. And I mean, I'm not very proud of it. But at the same time, I was like, well, I guess I just needed that as well. I needed to kind of have everything cleared out at home so I can let go of that. And then I suddenly don't have anything I need to think about. So it's never going to go as planned. And I think it's really good when people do actually also share the moments where it doesn't go well, because it's not reality to think, oh, I'm on this finding mission. I think I was almost first thinking when I said I'm not going to go on a long trip, people around me were like, oh, but you were going to go and we were looking forward to you. And I was like, but no, I'm not going to go. And it felt a bit like, okay, I disappointed other people. And that's when you realize that nobody says I have to go on a self-finding trip to Asia just because I said I would.
Absolutely. There's also the point of being able to change your mind while you're having the experience.
Exactly.
And say that, you know what, all the to-do list that I, planned before I was in this experience doesn't resonate with me anymore. And I'm not going to do it. And I think if there's something that you want to take from this interview, it is the fact that you can decide to take a break, but you can also decide that this is not the time. However, if you decide to take a break at some point in your career, it is not the end of anything. It's just the beginning of having more time for yourself. And this is what you're experiencing, and you're really sharing all the details of what does it mean, and what are you now focusing on, which is really fantastic, because we've spent a lot of time talking about it. And I want to ask you, as a sum up, what is one thing that you would change knowing what you know now and having this career break?
I think one of the things maybe that's quite interesting when you talk to some other people is like some other people seem to be better at negotiating of getting paid time off. It would have been very nice to just say, I have 6 months notice period. I'm going to leave after 3 and then just get paid for 3 months time off. But I was kind of planning. So it's more of like my negotiation skills need to be a little bit better maybe. But I think in general, I think the first thing you need to do is to land. It's kind of, you can't make like a huge plan and think from day one that you're off, you're just going to start running. And in my case, I think it was quite interesting that my body just kind of seemed to say, stop. I needed that, I think. So yeah, maybe don't make too many plans, dare to kind of be a little bit vague about it, and then just start.
I think that's the biggest challenge for overachievers and ambitious people that are used to entertaining day-to-day activity at work, that when you stop having all of those different impulses and sources of work, basically, you kind of wonder, okay, but shouldn't something come my way? So shouldn't I make something happen so that I don't feel that it's completely, chill? Is this normal? Is this how a day should look like? And I know I experienced this as well, so it was very interesting.
Yeah, you make up your own schedule, and I think I don't know if you've heard that. Like, we often say that kids need to get bored to get creative. I think it's exactly the same for grown-ups. You need to be bored sometimes, and that's maybe why it's good to get all those things that you have to do, like clean your apartment, get it out of the way, and then be bored for a while.
I think it's really funny you said that, because I don't know if it was you, but I heard that exact sentence a few weeks ago. So it's really on point with what is going on right now, right? This is fantastic. Thank you so much, Sonja. It was a really, really fun discussion. I want to invite you to go through the final 5 fire questions. So let's begin. So the first question is, what is one book you think everyone should read?
The one book I think everybody should read is The Art of Travel by Alain de Botton. If you haven't read that, you should really read it.
Great author. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Oh my God, that's really hard. But it is probably like Dare to be Bored. I think that's actually the best one.
Great. Who is your role model?
Lots of people around me.
What would you choose to do if you were to have another career?
If I had another career and money wasn't any issue, I think I would be a travel writer.
Wow, fantastic. And if you could change places with someone, who would it be and why?
Anyone. That sounds so exciting.
That sounds right on point with your future plan of discovering career paths. That's really fun. Thank you so much, Sonja. This has been a great conversation. I think that we all have a lot of reflections to do if we want to focus on, taking our own mental break. It doesn't need to be a physical break. It can also be a break in the weekends where you focus on something else other than what you're normally used to. So I really encourage everybody to take this interview with, some opportunity to reflect on what you want to change in your life or what you would like to develop in your life, and use the time that we have in between weekdays and in between, after work, to actually focus on those little points of inspiration, because it can really take you to a point that you didn't really think existed. And that's really fantastic. Sonja, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for the conversation. You were actually also getting me further in my thoughts by just asking me lots of questions.
That's fantastic to hear. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening today, and stay tuned for more updates with inspiring role models.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of FemLead Podcast. Share the news with your friends and follow us on social media at FemLead Podcast everywhere.